Ross Power, composer for film, TV and theatre, pianist, vocalist, and also secret violinist. It's terrific to see you. Thanks so much for giving up your time, Ross. You are another in our series who has quite a unique perspective on a career and building a career. So we can already see the kind of music that you're involved with. It's great to have you here, and we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Yeah, it's great to be here. I kind of had two big moments, really. One was, I think I was about 8, and I had just I'd been learning piano since I was about 5. So I've been playing piano, so I was starting to work stuff out, and my uncle had showed me it showed me some of his compositions and his process, and I'd just been this cute little 8-year-old going, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, these are how chords are," and he just got me excited about it, and I think I just got really excited about making things out of notes, and then I started noticing music in films. And so from the age of 8, and when I was watching films like E.T. and Star Wars and things like that, I was like, John Williams was a huge initial inspiration, just purely because it was like those films without that music, just they were so two-dimensional. And then suddenly this music, this sound world was created, and actually it was the sound world was more sci-fi than the sci-fi in a way. For me, it was like a real kind of dive into going somewhere else. I mean, not that I had a terrible childhood or anything, but it was, I think we all do that as people. We like to kind of have some fantasies here and there, and music was my fantasy since that age. I mean, when I started learning the piano, again, I was fascinated. My mum used to play Beethoven sonatas when we'd all gone to bed, and I used to creep down and sneak in and listen to her play, until one day she said, "Ross, I know you're there." I was hiding behind this bureau, and I was like, "Oh God, I'm in so much trouble." And so she said, "Come here." And I remember it to this day vividly, this just looking up at, I think it was the Pathétique, and it was this really old Beethoven book. The notes were tiny. I mean, I can barely read them these days. I need to get I sort of think, and just being fascinated with this language or presentation of the language through notation, and the fact that she was reading that and playing the piano, I just blew my mind. I just thought it was Xbox for the 80s. It was brilliant. And so that was my passion. And then so when I was 8 and I started noticing the music in films, I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to make these. I want to make music to help tell stories. Loved stories. Love to read. Love to watch films and things like that. And so from the age of 8, it was I had 3 choices. It was either be a film composer.
Yeah.
Also at that time, my mum was playing a lot of Phantom of the Opera, and she had always wanted to go and see it, but loved the music from it. And we used to play the from the songbook. And so I had these kind of crazy fantasies of what it was like to go to the Phantom of the Opera. Of course, now I know it's just some busy street in London, and it's so and so, and it's all fine. But then it was, I would go to London and I would turn up in a Rolls Royce, and there'd be a red carpet, and that's how my brain was working. It's okay. Kids' brains are brilliant. And then suddenly, so I wanted to be a film composer, I wanted to be a West End musical director, or a Blue Peter presenter.
Okay.
I think astronaut might have been in there at some point, but those are the key 3 music things. So obviously I was still only 8, 9 years old at this stage, having no idea of the reality of what it would take or anything. But I think that's the point, is that passion and enthusiasm in music is what drives most of us forwards. I think that's what it is. So then I just carried on, and I became a chorister, and then head chorister at St Mary's Church in Woodbridge. I was about 16, and that was very inspiring in a different way. And I mean, really, really, really helpful for understanding harmony, being the harmony, using your voice, not even an instrument, but your voice. I mean, of course, the voice is an instrument, but you know what I mean. That's the door.
Don't worry about it. Do you need to go and answer? Do you need to go and answer?
I have staff. I don't really.
Okay.
So I was a chorister, and that was brilliant. And then I think about age 15 or 16, I started playing. I got the opportunity to start playing with Saijo. Do you still have Saijo?
We have just relaunched it.
Great.
And I'm running it. So
excellent.
I am absolutely delighted that we've just got that off the ground this year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're doing something. I'd love to come and watch. Or
fantastic. Yeah, that would be great, Ross.
Or something, it'd be great. But yeah, so I'd always done a lot of classical, purely classical really, training at that point. But in my own time, off my own bat even, I had been writing music. From the age of 8, I had been messing around with. My mum used to give me, little roses are red, violets are blue, kind of little short poems, and say, write a melody for this and write a melody for that. So I started to explore melody and then harmony. I remember, the classic being taught to me. It's like it's a baptism of you have to. It's a rite of passage as a pianist. But I remember taking that and then exploring within that, because you've got the 1, 6, 4, 5 chord progression there, and exploring all the inversions of those chords.
Yeah.
Around, then doing it in every key and round and round. My parents, they were very pleased for me, but also I drove them mad because I just do round and round. But I developed an early understanding of basic harmony, doing all that, and then to go to Saijo and start applying these chords in a freer, more creative way, using music, using notation that was different to the classical notation, but chord symbols, rhythm pushes, improvisation. It was brilliant. So so I was kind of largely self-taught, but did a lot of listening. And at that point, I thought, right, I definitely just want to write music because I want it all. I want to write classical, I want film scores, I want to write jazz, I want to write pop songs, I want to do it. I don't want to limit myself to any one thing. And I figured actually the life of a film composer is to be able to turn your hand to any particular genre.
Sure.
And the last film I did was a film called Rise of the Foot Soldier, not a film for the faint of heart. It's an Essex beat 'em up crime lord kind of film. I think it's probably an 18, but it's but that score, it was like a complete 80s soundtrack. The director didn't want it to feel like anything was score, didn't want like creeping in sad music or anything like that. Everything had to feel like it was part of a classic 80s track. Duran Duran or electro pop kind of, and I actually bought this Moog here for that job. So just to get inspired. I mean, I've got loads of software synths, but just to get inspired and with knobs and run it through pedals and stuff. It was a lot of fun. But for me, writing 80s music, I've listened to it. I've not really done a lot of it. So it was a really exciting opportunity to do something I hadn't done before.
Sure.
And I think that's what's great about being a film composer or being a composer is just diving into different worlds.
Of course.
Supports that kind of whole fantasy element. I mean, I'm still waiting for the day to come where I might get a real job. I'm just joking. It is a real job, but I think the best way to approach it is to not think of it as a job. I think it's important to approach it actually as a business. I think you have to apply yourself in a certain way, and you have to have a certain attitude to keep yourself disciplined and focused. A lot of the time, if you've got incredible amounts of energy and enthusiasm, that will carry you through. I think no, it was I can remember how I felt at the age of 8, and it's the same as I feel now. I've had a few lumps and bumps along the way where I've gone, oh God, why is this so difficult? Of course, it's natural, Nothing goes in a straight line. It's all zigzagging everywhere. But right now I'm in a good place with my career, and finally, I mean, I'm 41. And I'm finally earning some money.
Yeah.
That's taken a long time to get here. It felt like until I was mid-30s, I was just treading water, if not worse.
Okay.
I have been there eating cans of sweet corn, scrabbling under the sofa for change to top up the meter bill, post university, because I didn't want to compromise on my career choice and all that kind of stuff. Whereas, a lot of musician colleagues that I used to work with did go, well, I just don't want that anymore. I want to earn some money and become an estate agent or something like that. No, nothing against estate agents, but there are quite a lot of trombonists that I'm just joking. Good friend of mine. Anyway, it's just, you've got to have the enthusiasm that pulls you.
Yeah.
Through, I think. I was doing so end of secondary school, end of sixth form.
Yeah.
So I was at sixth form.
Whereabouts?
At Northgate.
Right.
And I was studying music, performing arts, and English lit, and that was wonderful. And Tony Radford, who was my music teacher, was brilliant. He was always championing me getting out there and creating and using my skills. And through him and my old one of my old piano teachers, I started working as a rehearsal pianist and chorus director for local amateur dramatics groups. So quite quickly I could see that I had value, because I was earning £15 an hour, and this is in the mid 90s for a 15, 16-year-old, pretty good wage. £15 an hour, 3 nights a week, working for Ipswich Operatic, Phaedos, gallery players and places like that. And then from that I started MDing small productions at like the Spa Pavilion and things like that. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old and in charge of a small 3-piece band and doing some terrible rip-off of a really good musical, but in a bad, but it was suddenly I was earning money. And I didn't have, I think the only regular job I've ever had was a paper round on a Sunday morning. I don't know why I did it. I did it because on Sunday mornings you got paid £3 instead of £1.50. And so I thought, well, and it's weird. It from an early age I could understand the value, the money to work ratio. And I was like, well, I've got these skills, I'm going to use them. I want to be efficient with my time. And I think that's the key, is getting good at prioritizing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so back to the journey. So so I was doing amateur dramatics performances, and so suddenly I'm this late teen, 18-year-old about to go off to university, and I go to Goldsmiths College, University of London, to study music, which then was a really cool, interesting, I mean, it probably still is a cool, interesting course, but I don't know. But then it was a really interesting mix of pop, jazz, classical, opera. It was a general BMUS course, so you did the academic stuff, a really heavy composition and performance slant. I turned up there. They said, what's your instrument? And I said, oh, piano. And they said, no, what kind of piano? Jazz or classical? And I was like, oh, I have to choose. So, and because I just, in that moment, I thought, I've studied classical my whole life. I'm, post grade 8 type level. I don't want to be a classical pianist. Oh, okay. I put jazz. I'd never had a jazz lesson in my life, but I'd been working it out myself and playing with Saijo and so on and so forth. Yeah. Anyway, I got to college and that was brilliant. But work-wise, there was always, everyone had to work in bars and restaurants and this and that. And I just thought that was it's not a waste of their time. It was a waste of my time. I wanted to be playing music. So I thought, right, I'm going to join a band. I remember walking around. I went to all of the pubs and bars in Greenwich, New Cross. I basically walked from New Cross down to Greenwich,
Okay.
beyond, and went into every pub, every restaurant, and said, do you need background music? Do you want some background music on a weeknight or a Sunday or something? And in that one afternoon, I picked up about 3 gigs that I then managed to continue, which meant I was earning, you know, 50 quid a gig. It wasn't loads, but it was 50 quid a gig. And I did 2 hours of playing instead of 8 hours shift work or something, you know. And it just meant that I was playing and then again starting that career. So I always think that I look back at my college, university days as a really interesting thing to have done.
Mm-hmm.
And get exposure and get education and be influenced by people. But at the same time, it was running concurrently with me forging a more informal career outside of that. So by the time I finished my university degree, and I think this is what's great about music, is because it's so, you can apply music to so many different sectors, is that I already had a career of sorts. I already playing in a number of function party bands and disco bands. I was playing in bars. I'd set up a small teaching agency, and I had about 3 or 4 teachers working for me at that time, and I was 21. And I think the desperation to keep music as not be purist, but keep as much music in my life, I thought I just got creative with the kind of things that I could do to earn money. And so, yeah, that was really cool. And then when I finished university, I set up a recording studio in New Cross in a basement, a nail salon called Koo Studios. Koo is a Finnish word for moon, K-U-U, and my business partner was Finnish. Still is, and he's actually now the assistant producer for Tom York. And
oh right, wow.
So he's doing wonderful things. But at that point, I said, I was chatting with my parents. I said, I'm tempted to carry on and do a master's, you know, and it's going to cost another $5,000 or something. But I kind of really feel like I want to get into it, and I want to start learning on the job. And so I borrowed £5,000 from my parents and set up the studio with Mikko, and we had, I think, 2 or 3 years of doing that, which was great. We started our foray into writing music for TV or corporate. We did a bunch of corporate music and library stuff and idents and things like that, but also to help pay the bills, pay the rent for the studio, we would run the place as a recording studio and a rehearsal studio. So we and this was don't forget, this was the turning point in music technology. So when I went to university, I had a 486 Pentium 2 33 mega, I can't remember, it was something like that. And a terrible bit of music software called Music Time, and you could only have 16 staves, and the 10th stave was always channel 10, so it had to be percussion
drums.
And I'd run it through my Yamaha PSR keyboard, and I'd turn on the reverb button to make it sound better and things like that, you know. And I, you know, it was really, I mean, that time was great because in a way, sometimes technology stops us being creative. We have to remember that technology is there to facilitate us. Sometimes it's too big a canvas, and we actually need to remember to use technology to bolster what we're thinking in here. Not, oh, I'll do a piece that sounds like that loop I found. Well, that's someone else's good, you know, that's not true creative thought. That's, I want to write a song about this, and I'm tapping on this table, and I like the sound of that. I'm going to record that, and then I'm going to put it through some cool plugins that I can find on my computer, that kind of stuff. But we didn't have that. I had this 486, and what I used to do is I used to write at this stage. Sorry, I'm just going back a bit. I used to write music for nature documentaries. About 15. And I was really wanted to write music for picture. So I had an old telly, I had a VHS.
Lovely.
And I used to record nature documentaries off the telly downstairs. I had my 486 Music Time software, and I would kind of spot okay, I'm going to write, okay, the whale comes in here, so I want a big cymbal swell and a, you know, harp, and the, you know, the trombones come in or whatever, you know, and that's at 3 seconds. So I'd work out, I'd do a tempo and work out, and I just basically did what I do but now, but I had to work it all out.
Okay.
And work out that it was 9 seconds till that point, so therefore I needed to do this many bars of this tempo to get there, and then I would write that piece. And to play it back, this is the best thing, to play it back I had to press spacebar and play on VHS at the same time.
At the same time.
I never quite, it was always, I never quite got it right, but it was good enough. And I was
Absolutely, I remember that. I remember exactly that experience.
Of course there were ways of doing it, but I didn't have those facilities, or
Yeah,
think MIDI timecode or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a house where my dad was a civil engineer, and a part-time, you know, amateur folk musician, and my mum was a housewife and played the piano, and they didn't have any idea. We didn't have any contacts, so
Yeah.
everything was self-made, and in a way I love that. Sometimes, you know, I've gone, oh, if only my uncle was the owner of Sony.
Yeah.
Really handy. And
Yeah.
and I would say I would say at this stage, if any of your younger students coming through have got contacts, use them. You know, don't use them. Maybe choose your timing when to use them. Maybe going to the head of Sony age 17 saying, yeah, I can produce, do something you clearly can't, isn't a good idea. But maybe saying, I'd love to get some work experience, and getting in there with people that you know. You know, the business is filled with nepotism, that is for sure, but you still have to be good. So you have to be good, and there's nepotism, and there's luck, and then you make your own luck, and somehow through all of that you get a career. So yeah, so I basically did that, and then I just went through different I went on different adventures really through music. So I was I got into, because of my choral background, I really loved the use of voice and its power as and immediacy for people learning music. So I got into workshops as an animateur, and started going into schools in Tower Hamlets and Southwark, and then from there I started as a rehearsal pianist and then became an animateur, and then from there I became a musical director and composer for my own big shows that we put on at the festival hall. Okay. So I've put on I've stopped doing that now because I've gone into other things, but I did good 10 years of from 2008-9 through to 2008 through to probably just before the pandemic really, and we'd have 500 primary school age kids on stage, and we'd have beatboxers and dancers, and we'd have brass bands, we'd have a pro band, and I would write these shows that would kind of have a thread through. There wasn't acting so much, but there was beat poetry and all sorts. So a great opportunity to get creative, work with people, and using music through their voice, which and that's what I still do now, as well as composing. I run with my wife and I run UK Soul Choirs, which is an adult community choir,
right?
And we've got 10 branches between London Bridge and Canterbury, and it's slowly growing. Maybe we'll get up to Suffolk one day.
Right.
But it's basically adult music education.
Okay.
People come along and learn songs, but as part of that, it's a there's a choral aspect to it, but all the warm-ups are aimed to use music to boost confidence and give people a sense of coordination and develop their musicality and find some level of transformation and discover their own spirits. Which I was thinking, if I got the biggest job in the world, film-wise or something, I'd still want to do that. That's really important to me. That there's nothing like standing in front of 60, 80 adults waiting for you to say something interesting, and then you play a bit of piano, you do some music workshop games, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's like a weird musical stand-up comedy thing that ends up happening, but it's a lot of fun. But everyone's connecting, and that's what's so great about it.